Let the torch of freedom burn.
You find your way to WallBuilders Live. It's the intersection of faith and the culture. That means we're applying our faith. We're taking a biblical worldview and applying it to the issues of the day, every area of the culture. Nothing is off limits, and every single one of those areas, every single one of those issues, we look at it from a biblical, historical, and constitutional perspective in order to apply those issues and those principles to whatever's going on in the world around us. It might be your backyard, your family, your kids, your education system, your politics, your government. I mean, everything is addressed by the Bible. Everything affects our lives, and therefore we need to find the right position on those things. We need to have some wisdom and some discernment in this culture that seems to be going haywire in so many different ways. But in some ways, you see some bright lights of encouragement and hope and positive things happening. And so here at WallBuilders Live, we just take whatever the hot issue of the day is, and we look at it from that biblical, historical, and constitutional perspective. We do that in a conversation with America's premier historian, David Barton. He's the founder here at WallBuilders. And Tim Barton, president of WallBuilders, is a national speaker and pastor, and joining us for that conversation. And my name is Rick Green. I'm a former Texas legislator and America's Constitution coach. We would encourage you to visit our website today. Before we dive into the topic of the day, I'd encourage you to check out wallbuilderslive.com. It's got archives of the program from the last few weeks and a lot of other great information. Most importantly, has a contribute button there that we would encourage you to click on and then make a contribution, because as a listener, you are the one that makes this program happen. We're a listener-supported program, and we're so thankful for all the folks across the nation and frankly around the world that enjoy getting good information from WallBuilders Live. They get inspired, they get equipped, they share it with their friends and family, and they make those contributions so that we can continue to do this great work. Thanks for being a part of that. Check it out at wallbuilderslive.com today. All right, guys, we got a controversy with a federal agency we're going to be dealing with later in the program. But just to get us started here, I mean, a lot of times things that were really everybody agreed on initially, you wouldn't think would become controversial, actually become some of the biggest fights in our country.
Well, just out of curiosity, if I ask you guys to name the top controversies you can think of right now, what would come to mind?
In America?
Abortion.
In America or the world?
Israel.
Okay,
Guns.
Israel. There you go.
Abortion, transgender, human sexuality.
Trafficking.
Human trafficking, sure.
Rick, you got any to throw in?
I think that, yeah, guns, for sure. Let's see, right to worship or, express faith publicly.
I noticed that none of you said postage stamps. And that is
that was number one on our list, right,
yeah,
Tim? It was, yeah.
But that's the big controversy. That's what the federal lawsuit is about, and it involves the Postal Department and involves postage stamps. And who would have ever thought that this would be a big issue, a controversy? So I got to looking at this and said, are postage stamps controversies? And it turns out that there have been 11 controversial postage stamps in history. Can you name any of them?
Wow.
Controversial meaning, people got upset because the post
people
office
got
did
upset, and the Postal Service got beat down with comments and letters and contacts.
Can you give us an era?
The first, all right, here, I'm going to give you an era. The first big controversy was 1934, and the last big controversy was 1995 on postage stamps.
1934?
Yes.
My
and you'll
goodness.
never get it. I don't bet, but I'll lay whatever amount of money you want on this that you'll never get this one. And
Gosh.
It's the biggest controversy in postal history.
I am so intrigued. 1934, so era of American history. I mean, certainly
Roosevelt's in office.
Yeah, so there could be something with racial minorities.
We've already messed up with the 16th and 17th Amendment, so we're 20 years after that almost, or 17 years after that. What could it be? 1934. I have no idea.
I'm out.
It's Depression time, right? I mean, is the Depression started yet? No.
Have we allowed women a voice yet?
You have not got anywhere close. The controversy is over Whistler's mother. Do you know what that is?
What?
From a book?
No, Whistler's mother is the famous painting. It was a iconic painting, Whistler's mother, and if you can...
Yes, I do know it.
Okay, the painting is done as a horizontal landscape painting, okay, kind of from right to left. On the postage stamp, they made it a vertical portrait-type painting, which meant they had to cut part of the painting off.
How dare they?
Oh,
This is
that's so
they?
controversial.
I'm actually looking it up so I know what the heck we're talking about here. Now I see
love it.
Yeah. Oh, that.
Yeah, you see it now, right?
Yeah.
And so the controversy was you mutilated the painting. How can you mutilate that? This is the worst art disaster in history.
You modified the art.
So this is a huge national controversy. The number 2 controversy of postage stamps was 1936. Susan B. Anthony, all right, women's rights, suffrage, etc. They had her on a cross-hatched background, which is a lot of postal stamps have that. So it looks like she had a cigarette in her mouth when they put her on the postage stamp.
Hey, women have the right to do what they want. Smoke, you help yourself.
And so it goes. And then the third one was in 1937. They came out with the Union Civil War generals. So they had Sherman, Grant, and Sheridan. And as you can imagine, all the Southerners objected, how dare you put those guys on a postage stamp? But then for equal release later that year, they came out with the Confederate generals, and that was Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. And so how could you...
I feel like I would like most all of these stamps anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I don't collect stamps, but I might now. This is kind of fun.
It's a great controversy to have. So
I want to know if any of our listeners out there if they're stamp collectors and they have each of these that David has mentioned, you got to send us in an email and tell us about it.
Send us a picture.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Now, I told you the Civil War generals. Robert E. Lee was a particular controversy, and not because he was from the South, but because Southerners protested that in the picture they had him on the postage stamp, there were only 2 stars on his collar, and there should have been 3.
See, that's a controversy.
Now, who sits there and looks at a postage stamp and says, "Oh my gosh, he's only got 2 stars. It should have been 3."
I mean, in fairness, we probably would have.
Yeah, we might have.
History people, yeah, okay.
Okay, now, Tim, you should be able to do something with this. We do a lot with young people, telling stories of Pony Express, Bronco Charlie, etc., Buffalo Bill, all these Pony Express riders. So the Pony Express stamp was released in 1940. So, we're talking the anniversary here, and so there was huge objection to the Pony Express stamp. You have a Pony Express rider on a horse galloping. So what are you going to object to on that? All right. Number 1, they said the horse's mouth was open while galloping, which would not have been what the horse was doing when galloping. So that's a controversy.
Oh, man.
Number 2, the rider was holding the reins too loosely while he was galloping. He should have had tight reins.
I mean, back then there was one road that you're galloping on, right? There's not a lot of trails. If it's an open road, you can give the horse its head if you trust the horse. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that one, but okay, what else?
And the saddle was too far ahead of its time. It wasn't representative of what the saddle should have been at that point in time.
Man, I'm so glad somebody brought up these problems.
Oh, I mean, it is so good that somebody points out all these...
I can't help but think of some people that have come up to the book table after a presentation that remind me of what these folks. They find some little thing that you said in your speech or your presentation, and it just ruined the whole thing for them because there's.
So, Rick, to that point, I had somebody come up to me one time after a presentation, and they said, "I disagree with something you said." And I said, "Really? What was it?" They told me, and I said, "Well, why do you think that was wrong?" And she said, "Because that's not how they showed it on Little House on the Prairie." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do right now." Yeah. I was like, "Well, yeah, you're right. They probably didn't show it that way, but yeah, this is the kind of controversy."
If only Charles Ingalls was here.
You're going to love this one. This is the big controversy in 1989. The Postal Service delivered what they call the Prehistoric Animal Series. Dinosaurs, right? So the dinosaur that they labeled as a Brontosaurus was, in fact, an Apatosaurus. I can't even pronounce it.
Sir, I'm offended right now that you could not pronounce that word.
The Pterodontus actually weren't dinosaurs. They were flying lizards.
See, yep, that's a problem.
Can you imagine the Postal Service getting inundated with this kind of controversy?
Wow.
I mean, this is and so to set up the program today, there is a lawsuit against the Postal Service because the Postal Service that now for several decades has allowed you to customize your own stamps. So, Tim, if you want to do a family stamp of you and Gabby and Finley and put that out there and use that on your letters to your friends, Postal Service allows you to customize stamps. Now, you can't do something that is a violent kind of scene. You can't have you shooting someone. You can't do open porn kind of stuff. And the Postal Service says, and by the way, you can't have anything religious at all on your stamps. You can do no religious content at all on your stamps. Oh, wait a minute. What if I want to do the national motto, "In God We Trust"? That is by federal law, by the way. I can't do that. And so the Postal Service has said no religious content at all on any kind of personalized stamps. And so that's resulted in our friends at First Liberty taking the Postal Service to court on this. And so this is the new postal controversy, is you can't have any kind of religious content. I would say that, by the way, this is actually a genuine controversy because this is constitutional as opposed to other things that were perception of Whistler's mother or whether the reins were too loose on a galloping horse. So this is going to be a fun one, but I thought we'd set it up with looking at postal controversies that have happened over the last century.
All right, guys, quick break. Jeremy Dice is the attorney that will be with us from First Liberty on this case against the Postal Service, and it doesn't have to do with whether the picture is slightly cut off because it went portrait or landscape. Stay with us. You're listening to WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. As the upcoming elections approach, what qualifications should we look for in our leaders? One prominent founding father, Governor Morris, had a strong opinion on this question. Morris, a signer of the Constitution and its penman, openly declared, "There must be religion. When that ligament is torn, society is disjointed and its members perish. Vicious and unreligious rulers, placed in a situation where they can exercise authority for their own profits, will betray their trust. They take bribes. They sell laws. They sell honor and office. They sell their conscience. They sell their country. The most important of all lessons is the announcement of ruin to every state that rejects the precepts of religion. Therefore, in the upcoming elections, withhold your vote from any who would be hostile to basic religious principles."
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Jeremy Dice is with us from First Liberty. Always good to have you, Jeremy. Thanks for your time today, man.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, so you've got a suit going now against the Postal Service over stamps. They don't even want you to have any kind of religious content on stamps now?
Yeah, as incredulous as that sounds, that's actually true. There's a regulation out there that prevents you from having a list of things on customized postage stamps. Now, let's back up for a second. I don't know about you, Rick, but I've never created a custom postage stamp in my life. Didn't even know they actually existed. But I guess that we're in a day and age where we customize everything. And you can apparently get custom pictures and content on your postal stamp.
No kidding.
Well, that is unless you have a number of things. Like if you want to advocate sort of political activism on there or certain types of it, drugs, alcohol, sex, all that kind of stuff, that's going to be just permitted. You can't do that. Well, within that list of, violent imagery and drugs and whatnot, within that list is also that of religious items can't be on there. And so I guess you can't have like a bong or something on there, but at the same time, in the same category is, a Bible or the words "God bless Texas" or something like that.
Because, of course, the Bible is, just as dangerous to people as drugs and prostitution and those sorts of things. I mean, we, of course, have to throw it into that category.
General, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Exactly.
Unbelievable.
So there's this reg that's out there, and the federal government has been enforcing it, that you just can't have this. So, for example, about a year ago, we worked with the Hunt family. Now, the Hunt family owns the Kansas City Chiefs.
Sure.
And Mrs. Hunt wanted to send out a Christmas card with her family standing in front of Basil's Cathedral right there in Red Square in Russia, in Moscow. And the Postal Service turned that back. Actually, it was the vendors of the Postal Service. They turned that request back because it was too religious. Now, you got to be sitting there going, well, wait, what was too religious about it? Here you got the family standing there. They got a banner that says Chiefs Kingdom on it. And behind them is that famous onion-shaped dome, Basil's Cathedral, right? It was the cathedral that was too religious. Just the very picture of that historic church was enough to violate this policy and say, no, you actually can't have that produced. But look, the Postal Service can produce their own Madonna and Child stamp, but why can't we just file one that wants, a picture of Basel Cathedral on it or something?
Yeah, I mean, is there? What do you think their motivation is? Is this fear of a lawsuit from Freedom from Religion Foundation or something that the Postal Service is allowing a religious symbol, which should absolutely be allowed? But I mean, is that their reasoning? They just don't want to fight the leftists that would try to put a stop to it?
We haven't really learned their reasoning yet, and I'm circumspect on this because I don't want to speculate too much on it. But look, I think it may just be a simple oversight that someone grabbed a bunch of boilerplate, threw it in there, and that's what we've come out with now.
Right,
but frankly,
right.
It's left the vendors here. So you probably can guess that the Postal Service themselves, they're not the ones that actually print these custom postage stamps. They leave it to online people and whatever they're out there that provide these things to do that. And so they make a little bit of profit off of that. And, that's great. That's our economy at work. But I think it's left them frustrated beyond measure that they want to service these things, but they're caught by this regulation. So we filed a lawsuit against the United States Postal Service, which is always a fun day to be able to sue the federal government when you get to be able to do that. In this case, on behalf of a local graphic designer here in Plano, who wanted to have a variety of things. She's a graphic designer, so she's kind of artsy as it is anyway. She's come up with a number of designs that she wants to use, including the phrase "God bless Texas" that she would like to send out around the time of Texas's anniversary. She's got some stamps that involve missions work.
Which now, just as a side, Jeremy, I mean, just for our non-Texas listeners, we actually think it should be against the law for anybody to be against the phrase "God bless Texas." I mean, I'm sure not really, but I mean, come on, Texas, God bless
indeed.
Texas. Of course, that should be allowed. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We're kidding, but seriously, we are. So things like that, and even some, a picture of a nativity set that involves. She wanted to send out this Christmas and hasn't been able to do so. So she's designed these things and likes to be able to promote them elsewhere, but she can't submit it because she knows that even the submission process could get her into a bunch of hot water according to these regulations. So we've asked the court to basically look at this regulation and declare whether or not this violates the Constitution. Good. And my hope is that this will lead to a resolution of this matter rather quickly. It doesn't take a whole lot for the Postal Service and the Postmaster General to get a hold of this regulation and just simply strike through the word religion where it bars it here and allow things to go on as they should go on, as any common sense person realizes that you shouldn't have to suffer some sort of federal lawsuit in order to have, a nativity scene put on your stamp or a picture, for goodness sakes, of your family in front of St. Basil's Cathedral. That kind of thing gets absolutely ludicrous here. So hopefully this will be a short-lived lawsuit, but a wonderful result for the people of the United States.
It's the same kind of thing. I mean, you guys at First Liberty have pointed this out for years, and Kelly's deal, the thing that points out all the different hostilities against religion year after year. I mean, this is really the result of that happening for decades and decades, all of that hostility towards faith, and it's probably just silly language that got thrown in out of a fear of all of those things happening. So I really hope you guys have a quick victory on this, and it just makes sense. And it seems like the environment's getting better, not worse. I don't know. You fight this every day. I mean, you're right there in the trenches. At least we're winning more cases. I don't know that the environment's getting better, but we're winning more cases. Is that your sense on the front lines?
Yeah, I think so. I'm quick to add into that we lose exactly 100% of the cases we never bring. We're really good at what we do, so we win a high percentage of the cases we bring into the public square or into the court.
But if people just shrug when it happens instead of fighting back, that's a case you can't win.
Exactly, like this one, right? I mean, it's a postage stamp. Do you even recognize what your postage stamp looks like when you get the mail every day? Hardly anybody does, except for those that collect them. And that's fine. That's well and good. But look, it's not that big of an issue, right? Well, but it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you think about it, that you got the federal government, the United States of America, is saying that religion is so awful that it has to be included within a list of drugs and depictions of violence and things like that. And the full weight and authority of the federal government is going to fine you and punish you if you even try to apply with a religious image on your stamp. It is silly. I recognize that, and I think we should all recognize how absolutely ludicrous it is. But that's how freedom dies, is when we wink at things that are right. Beyond the pale as to be ridiculous, but we don't take any action on top of it all. So I'm really glad for a client, Susan Fletcher, who's willing to stand up and say, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. This is enough. Let's correct this problem. If it takes filing a federal lawsuit, literally making a federal case out of it, let's do it.
So good. So good. Jeremy, you guys, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you. We love First Liberty. Y'all do such great work, and so glad to see you take on these fights and win. It makes a big difference for the next generation coming up in the environment that they're going to enjoy here in our nation. So thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it, man. Look forward to getting an update from you, and appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back with David and Tim Barton.
Hi, this is David Barton. I want to let you know about a brand new book we have out called This Precarious Moment: 6 Urgent Steps That Will Save You, Your Family, and Our Country. Jim Garlow and I have co-authored this book, and we take 6 issues that are hot in the culture right now, issues that we're dealing with, issues such as immigration and race relations and our relationship with Israel and the rising generation millennials and the absence of the church and the culture wars and where American heritage is, our godly heritage. We look at all 6 of those issues right now that are under attack, and we give you both biblical and historical perspective on those issues that provide solutions on what each of us can do right now to make a difference. These are all problems that are solvable if we'll get involved. So you can grab the book, This Precarious Moment, and find out what you can do to make a difference. This Precarious Moment is available at WallBuilders.com.
We're back here on WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us, and special thanks to Jeremy Dyson, all the good work that First Liberty does. Fantastic organization, not only this case, but many, many others. They won at the Supreme Court. They won at every level. We love those guys and appreciate their time for coming on today. Back with David and Tim Barton. All right, guys, this one is definitely more controversial than the portrait versus landscape and cutting off a little bit of the artwork and all the other things that they used to complain about. This one's for real. This is a constitutional right we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and even saying it's more controversial, I think more important, it's more significant what happens with this, right?
Yeah.
Where you could look at some of the others and you're like, okay, it's kind of silly, whatever. It doesn't really matter if you have Whistler's Mother. It doesn't really matter the Pony Express. So those are cool. And again, we'd love to see some of those pictures. If somebody has those, that's awesome. But this one is significant because it does deal specifically with religious liberty, with expression. And so there's a lot at stake in what's going on in this case.
So part of what I think the Postal Service is going to have trouble with here is they have very ambiguous standards. But in addition to that, they're violating their own standards. So let me give you an example. I had the research pull this out for me, and I've got here in my hands, I have, 20 pages of postal stamps that have been issued by the Postal Service that are religious stamps, religious in content. The 4 Chaplains, World War II. Here's the Gutenberg Bible. Here's In God We Trust all over several stamps. Here's lots of Christmas stamps. Here's Columbus praying in the New World. I mean, just stamp after stamp after stamp. And, of course, as Jeremy pointed out, the Kansas City Chiefs owner stood in front of a church in Russia, and that was objectionable. You can't do that. So, number one, by their own record, there is a ton of religious stamps they themselves have officially done. And second, they're saying, well, it can't be controversial. And so just looking, here are some stamps that the Postal Service is allowed to go through. I would think they're controversial. The stamp of Slobodan Milosevic, I may not have said that right, but I remember who he is. He's charged with 237,000 deaths. Went to war crime trials, so he's okay. Nikolai Ceausescu, how do you say the guy's name? Recently, he was the guy, the Czechoslovakia, I think, the dictator there, charged with 60,000 deaths, and so they're okay putting him up. You have Monica Lewinsky's dress. That was okay. You have mass murderer Ted Kaczynski, stamp about him, stamp about Jimmy Hoffa. Anybody would think those are controversial, but the Postal Service did that. And then they've got all these pages of dozens of religious stamps, and they're telling her she can't have any religious content, telling the Kansas City Chiefs you can't have a church in the back. This is crazy. And so I think that's where the Postal Service is going to be in a lot of trouble, is not only is this a constitutional right, but you're subjective in your enforcement and in your definitions. And so, hopefully this is one that they get settled real quick and gets done. This should be a slam dunk. But again, who would have ever thought that content on a postal stamp would be as controversial simply because it's religious?
Well, we're so thankful for good attorneys out there and organizations that fight for these liberties for us, that help preserve these things. And we're thankful for you as a listener for supporting WallBuilders Live, and many of you support these other ministries as well. Thank you for doing that. That's an investment in freedom for future generations. And that's what happens when you go to wallbuilderslive.com and donate there at our homepage, because it allows us to bring this inspirational, educational, equipping information that we do on a daily basis and equip citizens to go out there and make a difference in their communities, their states, our entire nation. You're a part of that every time you make a contribution at wallbuilderslive.com. So thanks for considering that today. It's very easy to do, and we appreciate your consideration and your support. We also appreciate you getting involved in other areas. So we want to give of our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, just like the Founding Fathers. And lives mean giving of our time. It means looking for ways to invest in freedom or perhaps to become a student of freedom. And then fortunes, obviously donating, giving of our dollars to candidates that are good, that are standing for a biblical worldview and a constitutional perspective and defending the Constitution. Given to candidates, given to good organizations like WallBuilders and so many others out there. And then sacred honor is speaking truth, being willing to let your voice be heard. The culture needs that so bad right now. So we encourage you to use all the tools that have been put into your fingertips. We live at a time where everyone has a voice, and that includes you. So use those social media tools to be a force multiplier, to take good information that we share here on the program and share it with your friends and family. Become a Constitution coach and actually take one night a week and do a 6-week or 10-week course where you bring people into your living room or into your church and you take the Constitution class that David Barton and I did several years ago, where we go into Independence Hall, we teach in the room where the Constitution was actually framed and the Declaration, and then we go into the WallBuilders Library, and David pulls all these incredible things off the shelf, and we share all of that with you in that Constitutional Live course. Our Constitution coaches are teaching that class all over the nation, hundreds of classes taking place where people are coming together in living rooms and churches and community centers across the nation, studying the Constitution and studying what it means to be a good citizen. You can be a part of that. Go to constitutioncoach.com today to sign up and get your class started right away. Thanks so much for listening today. You've been listening to WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided forever.